Chapter 21. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. An SSS, grade player's fighting style. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Mike stood in the middle of the road and was surrounded by spiders. The 6 ferocious spiders that surrounded him continuously attacked him with their front claws. Meanwhile, another 5 poisonous spiders sprayed venom continuously. At this moment, Mike's entire body had turned green as he had been poisoned several times. He was also losing 5 HP every second. Each poisonous spider could stack a poison debuff on Mike, but the same spider's poison debuff would not be stacked regardless of how many times it sprayed poison. Therefore, the poison debuff on Mike's body could only total up to a maximum of 5. As a consequence, Mike was losing 5 HP per second. However, a casual attack from him would instantly fully recover his HP. Although the surrounding ferocious spiders looked scary and attacked constantly, each attack was blocked by Mike. At this moment, a ferocious spider behind Mike suddenly attacked Mike's back, but Mike seemed to have eyes on his back. He suddenly raised his right hand, and the iron sword stretched from his shoulder to his back, accurately blocking the attack. In fact, Mike was not aware that there was a spider attacking him from behind. It was all due to his insanely powerful passive skills. 100% blockage of physical attacks. In addition to that, he could counter-attack the enemy. Soon, the fierce spiders around Mike died one after another. Almost all of them were killed by their own attacks. However, as soon as they fell, the spiders behind them would swarm in and continue to attack Mike. If it were anyone else, they would definitely not be able to hold on. However, Mike handled it easily. The only things that could reduce his HP were the poison debuff on his body and the venom that would be occasionally sprayed toward him. The venom was not a physical attack, so he could not block it. However, Mike was not concerned. After all, he had the 3-piece HP recovery set. After spending a full 5 minutes, the surrounding ferocious spiders were all dead. There were only a few green poisonous spiders left. As Mike could not block these spiders' attacks, he could only go forward and personally attack them. After another 3 minutes, the poisonous spiders were all dead, and Mike's HP was still full. Only the poison debuff was still active, but it did not matter. It would disappear in a few seconds. Looking at the spider corpses on the ground, Mike revealed a satisfied smile. This was the difficult part of the dungeon. With 30 spiders appearing at the same time, it would be difficult for a 5-man party to handle them. In the memories of his previous life, there were many ways to fight in this dungeon. One of them was for 5 people to deal with 6 spiders and fight them head-on. Another way was to immediately retreat and turn left at the previous intersection. Using the narrow terrain of the intersection, the spiders would not be able to attack the players at the same time. However, this way of fighting was not easy either. Mike, on the other hand, had easily completed the most difficult area by himself. The only thing left was the boss. It was not difficult even for a normal 5-man party. Mike could naturally handle it easily. He continued deeper into the cave. In front of him was a room-like large cave. Although the space was very wide before, it could only be considered a tunnel at most. After arriving at the cave, Mike raised his head slightly. The mother of spiders was lying on the top of the cave. As long as Mike took one more step forward, he would attract the mother of spiders' hatred and the battle would start. However, Mike did not walk forward. Instead, he circled around the mother of spiders. He wanted to do something that ordinary players could never understand, draw out the father of spiders. After circling around for half a circle, Mike came to the opposite side of the entrance. The walls here looked no different from the surroundings. It could even be said that they were exactly the same, all covered by the spider web. However, all the players knew that behind the spider web in front of Mike was actually not a wall, but a small cave. Mike raised his iron sword and forcefully sliced through the spider web in front of him. Without the spider webs blocking his vision, the cave immediately appeared in front of Mike. There were 3 large male spiders inside, staring at Mike with their red compound eyes. Shwa shwa shwa. The 3 fathers of spiders rushed at Mike in unison. Mike smiled slightly and took a few steps back. In the next moment, a shadow suddenly appeared on the ground under his feet, and the shadow continued to grow. It was the mother of spiders. The father of spiders was already considered huge, it was 1 meter tall. Yet the mother of spiders was actually 2 meters tall, even taller than Mike, who was 1.8 meters tall. Even the students who had never logged into Second World had heard from their teachers that they must not attract the father of spiders' hatred in the spider cave. The reason being it was impossible for a 5-man party to defeat 4 bosses. Of course, if the party's level was already very high, they would definitely be able to defeat them. However, at that level, they would have chosen to go to an advanced dungeon instead. There was no need for them to go to a level 10 dungeon like the spider cave. Therefore, normal people would not fight like this. However, Mike could. That was an SSS. Grade players fighting style. Chapter 22. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Team name. This game is really simple. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. At this moment, Mike was already surrounded by 4 giant spiders. However, Mike did not panic at all. He was even smiling. Because it was too easy. Whether it was the mother of spiders or the father of spiders, none of them could harm Mike. They were all in physical attack mode. There was neither magic nor venom. Under such circumstances, Mike only needed to continuously attack the 3 fathers of spiders. As for why he did not attack the mother of spiders, it was because the moment the mother of spiders died, the dungeon would be cleared immediately. The 3 fathers of spiders would die instantly without dropping any loot. This was something that Mike would not allow. Since he was already in the dungeon, he had to maximize the benefits. The father of spiders was also a boss. Although the loot dropped from it was not as good as the mother of spiders, it was still pretty decent. Since Mike could fight without any pressure, these loots were like free loots. Mike would naturally not miss out on this opportunity. With a roar, one of the fathers of spiders had died and some items were dropped. However, Mike did not pick them up immediately. He had to kill the other 3 before the mother of spiders committed suicide. At this moment, the mother of spiders had already lost 1/3 of its HP. However, after seeing this amount of HP, Mike knew that his plan had succeeded. That was because the other 2 fathers of spiders had been attacking Mike and had lost their HP due to Mike's rebound skill. Their HPs were no longer full. Therefore, the time it took Mike to kill the second father of spiders was actually shorter than the first. Very quickly, the second father of spiders died. By then, the 3rd father of spiders only had half of its HP left. The mother of spiders still had about 33% of its HP left. Although the mother of spiders had much more HP than the father of the spiders, its attack power was also much higher than the father of the spiders. In comparison, if Mike did not make a move, the mother of the spiders' HP would drop a little faster. That was why Mike needed to attack the father of the spiders himself. With a bang, the 3rd father of spiders was killed by Mike. At this time, Mike had already stopped attacking and had begun picking loot from the ground. As for the mother of spiders, Mike did not need to care about it at all. In any case, it would kill itself later. After Mike picked up all the loot on the ground, the mother of spiders suddenly let out an angry roar. Because its HP had dropped to 10%, it went berserk. The mother of spiders' entire body was emitting a red light. It looked abnormally fierce, and the frequency of its attacks had increased by 1 point. This was a difficult part for other players. Whether or not they could withstand it depended on the strength of the players. Though it was a good thing for Mike. Because Mike could still block all of its attacks and not suffer any damage at all. On the other hand, the HP of the mother of spiders dropped at an even faster rate. 8%. 6%. 4%. 2%. 0%. After just 5 attacks, the mother of spiders had already killed itself. Successfully killed the mother of spiders, dungeon cleared. Calculating the rewards. Clear rating. SS, reward experience points. 2000, schwa. A golden light appeared on Mike's body. He had leveled up. Moreover, after leveling up, Mike's current experience points had also reached 50%. If it was a normal party fighting the spider cave, they would actually need to fight it 5 times before they could level up. This was because they would evenly split the experience points among the 5 of them. Moreover, they would only fight when they were all almost level 15. Therefore, the experience gained from fighting would be lesser. Hence, if one person cleared the spider cave, there would be a huge amount of profits. However, only Mike could do this. Seeing the purple weapon on the ground, Mike's eyes lit up, and he immediately bent down to pick it up. Poisonous sword, rarity. Excellent, attack. 30, weight. 1.5 kilograms, usage level. Level 10, special effect. Each attack will cast a poison debuff on the enemy, losing 1 HP per second. Mike smiled and immediately equipped the poisonous sword, putting his iron sword back into his backpack. The other loots were very ordinary and Mike had no intention to use them. He only equipped an ordinary green belt. After all, he did not have a belt right now, so he needed to use it first. At this time, the system sent out another notification. The announcement of you clearing the dungeon is about to be sent to you. Please name your team. Hearing this notification, Mike thought for a moment, then revealed a mischievous smile and entered a line of words. Then, the system sent another notification. May I ask if your ID is anonymous? Mike immediately chose no. Some people did not want their ID to attract others' attention, but Mike was different. It did not matter even if the ID God Slayer attracted many people's attention. After all, no matter how hard they searched, they would not be able to find him. After all, no one would have thought that a person who had activated AD.grade in school was actually the famous God Slayer in the new server. Soon, Mike was teleported out of the dungeon. The entire new region once again rang with a full service announcement. Congratulations, this game is really simple. Party was the first to clear the Spider's Lair dungeon. Party leader. God Slayer. Party member. None. Congratulations, this game is really simple. Party was the first to clear the Spider's Lair dungeon. Party leader. God Slayer. Party member. None. Congratulations, this game is really simple. Party was the first to clear the Spider's Lair dungeon. Party leader. God Slayer. Party member. None. 3 full service announcements. Solo clear of the Spider's Lair. Chapter 23. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. You call these treasures ordinary goods. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. At this moment, Mike had already left the dungeon and had been directly teleported to the entrance of the dungeon. He planned to return to the City of Light and sell the trash equipment in his backpack. Of course, the trash equipment in Mike's eyes was actually top quality equipment for other players, because they were all green excellent quality equipment. In fact, the Spider Cave would not drop so many good items every time. As for the outstanding quality purple equipment, it was even rarer. The reason why Mike was able to obtain such a big harvest was not that he was lucky, but because this was the dungeon's first blood, so the rewards were naturally very high. In the future, no matter who cleared the Spider Cave, the loot would not be as good, including Mike himself. At this time, just as Mike was about to walk to the City of Light, he heard a cry of surprise behind him. You really cleared the Spider Cave. Mike was slightly stunned. He turned around and saw Super Rich and the others. At this time, they had already completed their class change in the City of Light and were killing monsters near the Spider Cave to level up. They definitely were not expecting Mike to actually clear the dungeon, so they were very surprised. Of course, they were just surprised and had no malicious intent. Mike looked at Super Rich as he walked over and nodded slightly. It could be considered as an admission. In fact, it did not matter whether he admitted it or not, because there was a full service announcement just now, and everyone knew about it. At this time, Super Rich had already walked over and saw the poisonous sword in Mike's hand. "Is that the loot you just obtained?" Super Rich widened his eyes, swallowed his saliva, and asked uncertainly, "The quality of this weapon can't be outstanding purple," Mike answered indifferently. Super Rich's eyes twitched twice. Although he could roughly guess that it was not an ordinary weapon. Just by looking at its shape, it had to be of excellent blue quality at the very least. However, he was not expecting it to be a piece of outstanding purple equipment. What was even more unexpected was that God Slayer actually spoke so calmly. Super Rich thought for a moment and took the initiative to speak. "Fellow student, I believe that you should have other gains in the Spider Cave. If you have anything good that you want to sell, you can sell it to me directly. I'll give you a price that will satisfy you." The last time they talked, Super Rich wanted to buy the equipment on Mike's body but was rejected by him. This time, Super Rich changed his strategy. "Since you're not willing to sell the equipment you're using, you must have those that are worn out, right? He can't just throw the equipment on the ground or sell it to an NPC, right? After all, a level 10 excellent equipment could only be sold to an NPC's shop for a few silver coins at most, but selling it to a player could earn him a considerable profit." This was beneficial to both Super Rich and Mike. Mike had nothing to hesitate about. From their equipment and the ID of the guy in front of him, it was evident that they did not lack money. Since he was already planning to sell the equipment, directly selling it to them would save Mike a trip to the City of Light. "Alright, I do have a few ordinary items here. See if there's anything you want." When he heard ordinary items, Super Rich's eyes flashed with disappointment. However, when Mike sent the information of the equipment in his backpack to Super Rich through the private chat channel, Super Rich was shocked. All of them are level 10 excellent quality equipment. There's even an excellent quality weapon. You call these treasures ordinary goods? The corner of the Super Rich man's eyes twitched again. He was indeed very rich, but he had not bought any good equipment until now. Because everyone's goal was the same, to enter Second World and improve their own strength. No one was willing to be inferior to others, so how could they sell good items so easily? Up until now, Super Rich had only bought a few pieces of excellent quality equipment. Moreover, most of them were around level 5. There was not a single piece of level 10 equipment. Not to mention the excellent quality blue equipment. In the new region, there would definitely be some lucky people who would obtain blue equipment, but no one would be willing to sell them. It was very simple. Using a green weapon to fight a monster would take 20 seconds. Using a blue weapon might take 5 seconds. While using a green weapon to fight a monster, the blue weapon would have already killed 4 monsters. This was a huge advantage. Therefore, such pieces of good equipment were basically things that people were willing to buy yet no one was willing to sell. Furthermore, the equipment that Mike offered would definitely cost a lot of money. After thinking for a moment, Super Rich stretched out a finger. "I want all of this equipment, 10,000 federal coins." "Deal." Mike smiled. This price was indeed not bad. Mike earned a great deal. It really was easy to earn rich people's money. Chapter 24. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Clearing dungeons by himself. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The transaction happened quickly. Mike posted the transition on the forum and Super Rich immediately spent money on the transaction. 10,000 federal coins were instantly transferred to Mike's account. Super Rich did not immediately distribute the equipment to his underlings behind him. Instead, he said to Mike seriously, "Let's add each other as friends. In the future, if you have any good items, give them to me first. If I have a need, I will definitely give you a satisfactory price." Mike naturally would not reject this kind of cooperation. In any case, the things he would be putting up for sale would be things that did not satisfy him. Since someone was willing to pay for it, it was naturally the best. The two of them added each other as friends on the spot. "What are you going to do next?" Super Rich asked. Mike pointed at the entrance of the spider cave and said calmly, "I'm going to clear the dungeon." "Alone?" "Yes, alone." After saying that, Mike stepped into the underground cave, which was the entrance of the spider cave dungeon. Super Rich and the others stared at each other for a short while. The school had made it very clear that in order to clear the spider cave, 5 level 15 players were required to form a team. However, Mike had used his own strength to prove this statement wrong. This caused Super Rich to have some ideas. "Let's try to clear the spider cave as well," Super Rich suddenly said. The other 4 underlings were slightly shocked and quickly advised, "Young master, this is too dangerous. Didn't the teacher say that we need 5 level 15 players to clear the dungeon? If we die in the dungeon, it will be a huge loss. Let's level up first." The 4 underlings had the same attitude, they did not think they had the ability to clear the dungeon. However, Super Rich waved his hand and said, "God Slayer cleared it alone, are we certain that the 5 of us can't clear the dungeon? Moreover, our strength has increased a little. It should not be a problem." After saying that, Super Rich took out some equipment from his backpack and gave them to his underlings. When everyone saw the equipment, they fell silent. 6 pieces of level 10 green equipment and 1 piece of level 10 blue weapon. These could indeed greatly upgrade the party. Seeing the pieces of equipment, the 4 underlings became a little restless. Because they had also witnessed the huge profits of the spider cave dungeon. If they could successfully clear the spider cave dungeon, wouldn't they be able to quickly improve the equipment strength of the entire party by a large margin? Then, let's give it a try. Yes, let's give it a try. If God Slayer can clear the dungeon alone, we should be able to clear it too. Moreover, Young Master is an expert who has activated his A.grade talent. Upon hearing these words, Super Rich smiled faintly. That's right, he had indeed activated his A.grade talent, outstanding precision shooting. By using firearm attacks and skills, he could increase his attack power by 30% and increase his chances for a critical strike by 10%. Hence, he had just changed his class to a sharpshooter in the City of Lights. With so much level 10 green equipment and his A.grade talent, perhaps he could really clear the spider cave. Thinking of this, Super Rich waved his hand and called for everyone to enter. The few of them entered the dungeon at the same time. The school had taught them everything about this dungeon. Very quickly, the few of them got into formation and encountered the first wave of monsters. The 3 of them blocked the attacks of the 5 ferocious spiders at the front. Super Rich was a sharpshooter, so he naturally shot from the back. There was another person who had changed classes to become a priest and had been healing the front row. The first wave of monsters was easily cleared. Beautiful. It's not difficult at all. Maybe we can really clear it. This round of battle boosted their confidence. The second round of monsters were also very easy to deal with. Although the second round consisted of poisonous spiders, the priest knew detoxification, so it was not too difficult to deal with them. After spending a little more time and eliminating these poisonous spiders, the 5 of them took some potions to refill their HP. When they arrived at the final fork in the road, Super Rich reminded them, "This is the hardest part. Be careful, everyone." They had all been taught this in school, so the 5 of them were naturally very clear about it. A swordsman walking at the front smiled and said, "Young master, don't worry." He now had the iron sword in his hands, so he was quite high-spirited. After all, this was an excellent quality blue weapon. However, when the 30 spiders appeared around them and began the fight, he realized that the iron sword in his hands was completely useless. The attacks were indeed very strong. Each attack could cause a lot of damage. However, the problem was that there were too many monsters around him. His HP could not withstand the attacks at all. Every random attack from the spiders would cause them to lose more than 10 HP. Meanwhile, the 3 players in the front row had to deal with 6 spiders at the same time. If they launched a round of attacks in unison, they would deal dozens of damage. Even if they were lucky enough to kill one of the spiders, they would not be able to relieve the pressure at all. There would be other spiders that would immediately swarm in and participate in the battle. Plus, there was only one priest in their party who could provide healing. The HP of the 3 players in the front row was dropping rapidly. The priest had no time to heal them at all. Soon, the 3 of them fell to the ground one after another and died. 10 seconds later, Super Rich and the priest were also killed. The 5 of them were teleported out of the dungeon at the same time. The few of them looked at each other at the entrance of the dungeon. None of them said a word. This spider cave was so difficult. Did God Slayer actually solo cleared the dungeon? It was simply impossible. Chapter 25. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Spending money to gain experience. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Super Rich's expression was extremely unsightly at this moment. That was because he had lost his breastplate when he was killed by the spider. Although it was only a level 5 green equipment, he had spent money to buy it. Now, he had actually lost it for nothing. He swept a glance at the other 4 people. Each of them had more or less lost some of their equipment. This time, not only did they not gain anything, they even lost a few pieces of equipment. It was a huge loss. Having encountered such a situation, Super Rich's expression naturally became ugly. The others did not dare to say anything. Super Rich could not figure out how God Slayer did it. He could actually clear Spider Cave alone. That was a total of 30 spiders. Just as he was in a state of confusion, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Mike came out. The few of them subconsciously looked at the equipment on Mike's body. He lost nothing. In other words, you cleared the dungeon again? Super Rich asked. In fact, his question was complete nonsense. Because Mike's level had risen again. To obtain the dungeon's reward, one had to clear it. Since Mike had leveled up, it meant that he had cleared the dungeon. Hearing this, Mike nodded slightly, then looked at the people in front of him, raised his eyebrows and asked, "You guys entered the spider cave?" With this question, Super Rich was stunned, unable to say a word. Embarrassing, too embarrassing. Others could solo clear the spider cave, but all 5 of them died in it. Super Rich's expression was very ugly, but Mike revealed a smile. He was neither mocking Super Rich nor was he gloating. He was smiling because he had business again. "I have some ordinary goods here. Are you interested?" Hearing this, Super Rich's expression became even uglier. He had lost a lot of equipment, but God Slayer had gained a lot of loot. Such a comparison was really infuriating. However, although he felt uncomfortable, the cooperation still had to continue. This was beneficial to Super Rich. He needed to buy equipment after all. This time, Mike only brought out 5 pieces of green equipment. There was still some white equipment that Mike did not pick up. He did not like them, and Super Rich probably did not like them either, so there was no need to collect them. Super Rich looked at the equipment, and the 2 of them discussed the price. He sold them for 2,000 Federation coins. The last time, Super Rich was able to offer a price as high as 10,000 Federation coins was mainly because Mike had a level 10 blue weapon. This time, there was only green equipment, so the price was naturally not as high. Of course, it was still very profitable for Mike. After the transaction was completed, Mike smiled lightly and was about to enter the spider cave again. However, Super Rich spoke up, "God Slayer, I want to pay you to take us to clear dungeons." Mike was slightly stunned. He turned around and looked at Super Rich in confusion. Super Rich explained, "It's faster to level up from clearing dungeons than completing quests. Moreover, I can see that you're clearing dungeons faster than ordinary people. I'm just spending money to buy EXP." Mike did not answer immediately. He was hesitating. After all, he himself also needed to level up. If he brought Super Rich Man and the others along, the amount of experience that he could obtain would be reduced to 1.5. Super Rich also saw through Mike's thoughts and continued, "Don't worry. I will give you a satisfactory price. Moreover, all the loots are yours. I will pay you for what I want." His message was clear. He was really spending money to buy experience. Mike hesitated for a moment and agreed. "If the price is right, then I don't mind, but I have a condition." Super Rich quickly said, "Just say it." Mike nodded slightly and continued, "The condition is that you are not allowed to go anywhere after entering the dungeon. I don't want others to know how I cleared this dungeon." These words sounded a little obscure. It was easy for people to misunderstand and think that he had found a loophole in the game, and hence was able to clear this dungeon alone. However, Super Rich still agreed. Being born in a merchant family, he was very clear that everyone had their own secrets. Cooperation meant cooperation, there was no need to be curious. Moreover, Super Rich was not interested in it. He just wanted to level up. The two of them hit it off. Each time, Mike would bring 4 people into the dungeon and clear the dungeon. Super Rich would pay him 200 Federation coins and the loot would be counted separately. The other person would wait outside and take turns to enter the dungeon. This way, they could ensure that their party's level would be equal. This time, it was the priest who waited outside. The other 4 people entered the spider cave with Mike. As soon as they entered, Mike immediately rushed forward. Super Rich and the others followed their agreement and stayed put. They just stood there and watched quietly. They wanted to see how the famous God Slayer would deal with this first wave of monsters. However, an unexpected scene happened. They saw that Mike did not stop when he reached the first fork in the road. Instead, he continued rushing forward. The 5 spiders at the first intersection were attracted by Mike's hostility and followed immediately. The few people at the dungeon entrance were dumbfounded. Is God Slayer trying to die? If he continued forward, he will encounter the second wave of monsters. Is it possible for him to deal with 10 spiders at the same time? Chapter 26. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A dungeon run every 4 minutes. Was this really the novice's grave? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The 4 of them looked at each other and saw the shock in their own teammates' eyes. When they entered the dungeon, they indeed had no problem dealing with 5 spiders. However, if they were to deal with 10 spiders at the same time, they might not be able to handle it. If they were not careful, they might be completely wiped out. Most of the time, the limit was the limit. Just one extra monster could wipe out the entire team. For example, if a player attracted an extra monster, his HP would drop faster than the others. If the priest could not heal him in time and the player ended up dead, the remaining players would have to bear the extra pressure, leading to a team elimination. Therefore, under normal circumstances, everyone would not attract more hostility. However, God Slayer was alone. It was already unbelievable that he had dealt with 5 spiders at the same time, but he was actually dealing with 10 spiders at once. Wasn't he asking for trouble? The swordsman player with the iron sword and pink pants looked at Super Rich, could not help but ask, "Young master, shall we go and see how he fights?" Super Rich frowned slightly and waved his hand, what matters in business is credibility. If we wait here honestly, we will gain a friend. But if we break the agreement, we might gain an enemy instead. It's not worth it to satisfy our curiosity. This team naturally had Super Rich as the core of the team. Since he had said so, the others could only shut up. On the other side, when Mike arrived at the second intersection, he actually did not stop but continued to rush forward. When he first cleared this dungeon, he had forgotten one important thing. That was, he did not need to stop here to fight these small monsters. Because his way of thinking was still based on the habits of his previous life, so he subconsciously overlooked this point. In his previous life, if a small party ignored these small spiders, it would be very dangerous to directly attack the mother of spiders. Because not only did they have to deal with the boss, they also had to bear the attacks of the small monsters from all directions. However, Mike did not need to worry about this. When he came to the third fork, Mike continued moving forward. Behind him, there was a large group of spiders densely packed together. If a normal player was in such a situation, he would have stood there and waited for death. There was no way he could have survived. However, Mike was not worried at all. He continued to charge forward. Soon, Mike arrived at the boss's room. He rushed over skillfully and cut through the spider web on the wall. Then, he walked into the small cave. The three fathers of spiders in the cave immediately surrounded him and attacked Mike at the same time. The entrance of the small cave was blocked by the huge body of the mother of spiders. The large group of small spiders behind it could not swarm in at all. If they wanted to get in, they had to wait for the mother of spiders to die. However, if the mother of spiders died, all the other monsters in this dungeon would also die. Therefore, this was a special strategy, but only Mike could do this. Because no party below level 20 could resist 4 bosses at the same time, but Mike could. The cave was very shallow, and the mother of spiders' long front claws could hit Mike, which was exactly what Mike wanted. He kept attacking the 3 fathers of spiders in front of him. After he had changed to the purple weapon, Poisonous Sword, Mike's efficiency had increased by a lot. Very quickly, the 3 fathers of spiders died one after another. Meanwhile, the mother of spiders still had about 50% of its HP left. It was evident that Mike's attack power had increased greatly. Mike immediately turned around and continued to attack the mother of spiders. Under the double damage of Mike's attack and his rebound skill, the mother of spiders quickly fell to the ground. The time it took was twice as fast as when Mike had cleared the dungeon alone. After picking up the loot on the ground, Mike chose to teleport out of the dungeon. Following that, 5 people appeared at the dungeon entrance at the same time. The priest who had been waiting outside was shocked when he saw the 5 people suddenly appear beside him. He looked at the system time. It had only been 5 minutes, so he subconsciously asked, "Team Wipeout." Team Wipeout meant that everyone in the party had died. It was normal for the priest player to have asked this instinctively. However, his other 4 teammates looked at Mike with weird expressions. Mike smiled, "It's not wiped out, it's cleared." Then, the priest was stunned. To be honest, he did not believe it. Mike did not plan to explain further. Instead, he directly started to trade with Super Rich. Another 5 pieces of green equipment, 2,000 federal coins. Before the priest could react, Mike casually kicked out one of his teammates and pulled the priest into the party. The priest had just agreed to the party invitation, and before he knew it, he was already in the spider cave. Mike had already charged forward. The priest really wanted to ask his teammates about what had just happened. However, his teammates could not explain it clearly because they themselves did not know what had happened. After chatting for more than 3 minutes, they arrived at the entrance of the dungeon again. They had cleared the dungeon again. They had cleared the spider cave dungeon in less than 4 minutes. Is this really the legendary novice's grave? Why does it look so easy for God Slayer? Chapter 27. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The strongest unprofessional player in history was born. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Under Mike's lead, they cleared the dungeon several more times. They only stopped when Mike had reached level 15. It was worth mentioning that amongst the several clearances, one of them even dropped a level 10 blue pistol. Super Rich was very excited. He immediately spent 10,000 Federation coins to buy this pistol. At this time, although Super Rich and his members had not reached level 15, almost all of them were already wearing green equipment. To them, there was actually no need to continue clearing the dungeon. At least they no longer needed Mike's help to clear the dungeon anymore. Moreover, Mike also did not want to continue clearing the dungeon. He had other things to do now. Therefore, Mike took the initiative and said, "It's almost time for dinner, let's stop here. If there's a chance for cooperation in the future, let's contact each other then." Super Rich was naturally very willing. At first, he still regarded Mike as his competitor, but now he regarded Mike as an important network and ally. After all, their positions had changed. Now, Mike and he had a mutually beneficial relationship. The two had common interests, so of course, they could be considered allies. The two of them said their goodbyes in a friendly manner. After Mike posted a post on the forum, he left Second World. Returning to his room, Mike checked his account. There was a total of more than 40,000 Federation coins in his account now. Compared to his previous self, this was a huge sum of money. It was an astronomical figure. After all, in Mike's former life, when he was 18 years old, his monthly living expenses were only about 150 Federation coins. A cheap meal might not even cost 1 Federation coin. Except now, he made such a large sum of money in just half a day. If it were anyone else, they would be screaming with excitement and would have gone out to spend lavishly. However, Mike did not. He knew he would make more money in the future, and that this sum of money was just a small figure to the current Mike. Moreover, he had something to use this money for, so he could not spend it recklessly. He simply ordered a decent takeout, and about half an hour later, Mike returned to Second World. At this time, he already had 12 gold coins in his backpack. 100 copper coins equaled 1 silver coin and 100 silver coins equaled 1 gold coin. Mike could only earn 5 to 6 silver coins at most by clearing the spider cave. So where did he get these 12 gold coins? The answer was simple. Mike bought them. He posted a trading post before he went offline, but this time, instead of selling things, he was purchasing instead. Using Federation coins to buy silver coins. 1 Federation coin to buy 1 silver coin. In just half an hour, he had already spent more than 1,000 Federation coins. This price was actually higher than the current market price for game coins, but Mike did not care at all. Because he needed the game coins now, and it was a waste of time to earn the game coins himself. He could still earn money, and he even had many ways to earn it. However, time was very precious. With the gold coins, Mike immediately set off for the City of Light. He was going to use these gold coins. The City of Light, in the corner of a shabby bar, sat a middle-aged man who looked very down and out. At this moment, Mike had already arrived in front of this middle-aged man. "Hello, I want to learn a skill." Mike smiled. The middle-aged man raised his eyelids to look at Mike, and he nodded somewhat excitedly, "Respected Lord God Slayer, what do you want to learn?" Then, a list appeared in front of Mike. That's right, this middle-aged man named Alan was an NPC, a sharpshooter class instructor. Mike familiarly pulled the skill list to the bottom and found the skill he wanted. Gun Mastery. Learn how to use a firearm weapon and increase 1% firearm damage. Learning fee. 50 silver coins. Mike paid without hesitation and turned to leave. Alan took the initiative to ask, "Lord God Slayer, don't you plan to change your class to sharpshooter? If you succeed in changing your class, you can learn a lot of powerful skills." Mike smiled and waved his hand, "No thanks." After saying that, Mike immediately left the bar. Vaguely, Alan could be heard shouting to the bartender in the bar behind him, "Another glass of rum." The City of Light training field. A man who was carrying a large sword stood by the roadside. Mike walked toward him. "Hello, I want to learn a skill," Mike said with a smile. Similarly, Mike skillfully pulled the skill list to the bottom and learned a passive skill. He rejected the class change invitation and left. After that, Mike went to many places and learned many skills. 20 minutes later, Mike's skill list had undergone an earth-shattering change. Gun Mastery, God-tier passive enhancement, could be used skillfully with firearm weapons and increase firearm damage by 100%. Tachi Mastery, God-tier passive enhancement, could be used skillfully with Tachi weapons and increase the damage of Tachi weapons by 100%. Boxing Mastery, God-tier passive enhancement, could be used skillfully with boxing weapons and increase the damage of the boxing weapons by 100%. Magic Mastery, God-tier passive enhancement, could be used skillfully with all kinds of magic and increase the damage of magic by 100%. Other than that, there were many other things. In other words, Mike had already learned how to use all classes of weapons. The strongest unprofessional player in history was born. Chapter 28. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A quest that only Mike could do. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation not having a specific class, in other words, he was an all-rounder. There were players in Second World who had tried this method before, but they quickly gave up. The reason was very simple. Being an all-rounder meant that they were not proficient in anything. After players changed their class, they could learn powerful active skills. If they did not change their class, they could only learn low-level skills that were below level 15. Once the class change was successful, the low-level skills of other classes would be forcefully forgotten. In other words, if Mike changed classes to become a sharpshooter, he would not be able to use Tachi or magic. For ordinary people, this was nothing. Because everyone had already determined their desired class to learn before changing classes. Even if they learned low-level skills of other classes before changing, they would only lose some game coins. It was not a big problem. As for the skills being forgotten, it was even less worth mentioning. Learning how to use a weapon and increasing the damage by just 1% was a useless skill. However, to Mike, these passive skills were extremely powerful godly skills. Maybe in the future, Mike would change his mind and change his class, but that was a matter for the future. Though the prerequisite was that he had already obtained a specific class's special skill or tool. To have Mike change his class, the class had to be of great importance. Now, there were only a few gold coins left in Mike's backpack. He had just learned more than 20 passive skills consecutively. Some were class skills, and some were life skills. He had pretty much learned all the passive skills that could be learned. With so many skills, 12 gold coins were not enough. The reason why he could learn these skills was that the post on the forum was still buying him game coins. With a high price of 1.1, many people were willing to trade. After learning the skills, Mike closed the trading post on the forum and went to the dyeing workshop. However, just like before, he could not get in. He had no choice. He then left the dyeing workshop and went to another place, the City of Light's announcement office. There were many quests released by the king. Some were fixed and some were released randomly every day. The upper limit of the quests was determined by the player with the highest level in the region. If the highest level of the players in this region was level 20, then the highest level of the quests would only be level 30. Players could challenge quests above their level. There was no limit in Second World. The lowest level would always be level 10. After all, players who could come here were all level 10 and above and had graduated from the novice village, so there was no need to set missions that were below level 10. Mike came to the mission board and carefully observed it. He wanted to find a mission with a good reward. The difficulty was not important. With Mike's strength, he could usually complete it. After spending 20 minutes, Mike finally found a mission that suited him very well. In fact, it could be said that he was the only one who could complete it. Wheat Field Guardian. The wheat field in the east of the City of Light has always been an important source of food for the city. The farmers work diligently every day. But recently, a group of mutated locust monsters appeared and are crazily eating the crops. Under the king's order, whoever kills these mutated locust monsters will be rewarded. Mission requirement: kill 10,000 mutated locust monsters in the wheat field. Mission level: Level 25. Reward: Skill Book, Second Hand Mastery. Seeing this skill, Mike's eyes lit up. Mike had heard of this skill in his previous life. It was considered a very rare skill. Although in Second World, some weapons were used with both hands. For example, bows and arrows, and boxing gloves. However, most of the weapons were used with one hand. If one learned the Second Hand Mastery, then one could use a one-handed weapon on the left hand. Therefore, in Second World, there would be things like the dual blade style or the dual gun style. However, it was very rare. Because the Second Hand Mastery skill was too rare. Just from the difficulty of this quest, one could see how rare the Second Hand Mastery skill was. Mutated locust monsters was a very common type of monster in Second World. They were very weak and could only deal 1 damage to players. Even if level 1 players wore no equipment, the monsters could only deal 1 to 2 damage points at most. It was impossible for them to deal more damage. Despite that, no player was willing to provoke these mutated locust monsters. That was because they were always in groups. Every time a mutated locust monster appeared, there would be thousands of them. Even if they could only deal 1 damage, when 10,000 mutated locust monsters attacked at the same time, even a high-level player would not be able to take it. This was also the reason why the reward for this quest was so high. It was possible to attract the hostility of a small number of locusts. However, one had to be very careful with the distance. Otherwise, a slight mistake could attract hundreds of mutated locusts monsters. At that time, the only outcome waiting for the player was death. For normal players, this quest was almost impossible to complete. Even if the quest was completed, it would be completed after countless deaths and a large amount of time. Moreover, in Second World, dying would lead to a 10% deduction of experience points. If your current level needed 8,000 experience points to level up, then every death would deduct 800 experience points. Regardless of who it was, 10 deaths were the maximum before the player's level would drop. The loss was too great. For a level 25 player, it would take at least a month to complete the mission. Moreover, it was likely for the player to drop to level 1. 1 month later, most of the other players would probably have reached level 40 and above. The gap would be suddenly widened and they might not be able to catch up anymore. Therefore, no one would do this quest. However, Mike could do it, and he could do it very easily. Because Mike's passive ability was completely immune to physical damage. Chapter 29. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 5 minutes to complete an impossible mission. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Mike had torn the reward order from the notice board and officially accepted the mission, leaving the City of Light. The wheat field on the east side was not particularly far from the City of Light, and it was only a 15-minute walk. From afar, Mike could see the wheat field, but it was very different from the memories of his former life. In his old memories, the wheat field was always golden, and when the breeze blew, it would set off a wave as the wheat swayed. Just looking at it brought comfort and ease to people. But now, the scene in the wheat field was terrible. The crops were no longer harvestable and were badly damaged. On almost every plant, there were locusts that constantly devoured the plant. Occasionally, a large black shadow would suddenly fly up, and it looked very frightening. These locusts were completely different from the locusts in the real world. They were huge. Each of them was about 20 centimeters long. If someone asked, what is the most annoying monster in Second World? The answer would definitely be these mutated locusts. With only 5 HP, they were very weak, almost any attack could kill them. However, since they were so weak, neither would they provide players with experience nor would they drop any loot. They did not provide 1 EXP or 1 copper coin. Therefore, no one was willing to provoke them. After Mike saw these mutated locust monsters, he picked up his poisonous sword and walked forward. Soon, Mike was in the hostility range. Many locusts noticed Mike and flew toward him. However, when they came into contact with Mike, they died immediately. Mike, on the other hand, was not hurt at all. The locusts rushed toward Mike, but Mike did not stop walking. More and more locusts were attracted to Mike. The whole wheat field was covered with a huge shadow. The huge shadow had covered the sky and the sun. Under this huge shadow, Mike looked very small, as if Mike was the locust. Soon, Mike arrived at the center of the wheat field and stopped. He was completely surrounded by locusts. Within dozens of meters from him, there were countless locusts. They kept rushing toward Mike but died one after another. Every second, dozens of locusts rushed toward Mike, killing themselves. In 5 minutes, in only 5 minutes, Mike completed a task that no one else could complete. The entire wheat field was quiet. The reason why it took so long was because it took Mike some time to walk to the center of the wheat field. At this time, the ground was nearly covered with the corpses of the mutated locust monsters. Mike, on the other hand, was unscathed. If anyone had seen this scene, they would have stared in shock. No one could survive if they were attacked by so many locusts. Even a level 100 player would not be able to survive. However, Mike survived. Not only that, but he also successfully completed the mission. Mission completed. Please go to the Palace of Light to receive the reward. After seeing the system notification, Mike smiled and used the Hearthstone in his backpack. This was a tool that every player owned. After using it, they would return to the tavern. The cooldown time was 1 hour. When Mike learned the gun mastery skill in the City of Light, he had also bound the Hearthstone to a record point. Hence, Mike instantly appeared in the tavern of the City of Light. Seeing Mike, Alan in the corner took the initiative to speak again. Lord God Slayer, are you really not going to consider it again? Change your class to become a sharpshooter. You won't regret it. Burp. As he said that, he even burped drunkenly. Mike smiled at Alan and said nothing. He left the tavern. The City of Light tavern was on the west side of the city, while the palace was on the north side of the city. The entire City of Light was separated in the middle. However, it was still much closer than walking to the palace from the wheat fields. Soon, Mike arrived at the palace. The 2 guards saw Mike and stopped him. I'm sorry, respected God Slayer. Even if it's you, I still have to ask what business you have here. If it was any other player, the guard would have scolded, get lost, this is not a place for a guy like you. However, Mike was respected among human NPCs, so the guard was already considered very polite. Although Mike was stopped, he was not angry. He smiled and said, I completed the mission on the bulletin board. The one to eliminate the locusts. I came to the palace to receive my reward. Hearing this, even the guard showed a surprised expression. What? You actually completed that mission? Oh my God, it's unbelievable even for you. However, since you've completed the mission, you are naturally allowed to enter the palace. The 2 guards immediately gave up stopping Mike, and their gazes toward Mike held an even deeper sense of respect. Chapter 30. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Triggering a hidden mission, the missing princess. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. To be honest, no one knew how they confirmed whether Mike was lying or not, but that was not important. Mike arrived at the palace unimpeded, and the king was sitting on the throne and seemed to be discussing something with the ministers beside him. Seeing Mike enter the palace, the king immediately stopped his conversation with the ministers, looked at Mike and asked, "Oh, isn't this the heroic God Slayer? What are you here for?" Mike smiled and took out the bounty. "I've completed the mission to clear the locust monsters. I'm here to receive the reward." Hearing this, everyone in the palace was shocked. Many NPCs even started to discuss in low voices. What? He actually completed that mission. This is unbelievable. Oh my God, as expected of Lord God Slayer. He is simply the hero of the City of Light. Although their voices were not loud, they had no intention of hiding it from Mike. They controlled their volume so that they would look composed. All of them looked at Mike. The king, who was sitting on the throne, excitedly asked another question, "Are you sure it's the Wheatfield Guardian mission?" "Yes, I'm sure." Mike maintained his smile. "Good." The king excitedly patted the armrest of the throne and could not help but say, "The mutated locust monster has troubled the City of Light for so long. Finally, someone eliminated them." At this point, as if the king had realized that he had forgotten the important matter, he quickly said, "God Slayer, you are here to receive the reward, right? Look at me, I've already forgotten about it. Men, go and bring the second-hand mastery skill book from the treasury and give it to God Slayer. He is the hero of our City of Light. Human affinity plus 100. Mike suddenly received such a system notification, and his eyes revealed a hint of surprise. It was not easy to increase the relationship between a certain race, a major contribution had to be completed. He did not expect that there would be a surprise after he had completed the mission. To upgrade from respect to fanatical faith, 1000 friendliness was required. Who would have thought that this quest alone would increase his progress by 10%? Mike did not know what would happen if he upgraded his relationship to fanatical faith. He had never heard of anyone who had accomplished this in his previous life. After all, it was quite difficult to upgrade one's friendliness. Of course, it was much easier to upgrade a single NPC's relationship than the entire race. Every NPC had their own independent friendliness, but this was based on the friendliness of the entire race. The relationship between the human race and Mike was respect. If Mike provoked an NPC, that NPC would lose a portion of his friendliness and would only drop from being respectful to being friendly to Mike. Unless you killed that NPC's family, it was practically impossible to drop from respect to peace or even indifference. In short, it was very, very hard to increase the friendliness of the entire race, which was beneficial for Mike. Very soon, the second-hand master skill book was sent to the palace. Without any hesitation, Mike learned it. Second-hand mastery, God.tier passive enhancement, the extra hand can wear a weapon and have 200% damage. Having looked at the introduction of this skill, a strange smile appeared on Mike's face. The original effect of the second-hand mastery was that the extra hand could wear a weapon and had 50% damage. After all, it was just the extra hand, so it was reasonable for him to only deal half of the damage. However, after the God.tier passive enhancement, the damage dealt by the extra hand was actually higher than the damage dealt by the main hand. This was rather strange. Of course, although this was strange, it benefited Mike. Therefore, he happily accepted it. Mike had already received the reward and was about to leave the palace when he heard the king said, "God Slayer, are you willing to accept an important mission?" Mike turned to look at the king and asked with a smile, "What mission?" The king hesitated for a moment and stood up, "Let's talk in my study." After saying that, he took the initiative and walked to the side door. Mike naturally had no reason to refuse. The more the king reacted this way, the more it proved that this was a rare mission. It was very likely to be a hidden mission. As for the trigger conditions for this mission, Mike was not certain. It could be that he had to reach a certain level of friendliness, or it could be that he had to complete the reward mission. It was said that there was an endless number of hidden missions in Second World, and there were many different ways to trigger them. Moreover, many hidden missions were unique. In other words, as long as someone accepted this mission, they would not be able to trigger it a second time. Even if it was a different person, they would not be able to receive this mission. Therefore, no one dared to say that they knew how to trigger all the hidden missions. At this moment, Mike had already followed the king to the study. There were only the two of them here, so it was very suitable for them to discuss some shameful matters. The king turned around, looked at Mike, and sighed. Actually, I originally didn't want you adventurers to participate in this mission, but I really had no choice. My daughter went missing half a month ago. Hearing this, Mike's eyes lit up. The princess went missing. Such a big matter, if he could complete the mission, the rewards would definitely be very valuable.